The Battle of Uhud was the second battle between the Quraysh and their army against Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Islamic army. The battle took place in March of the year 625, 3 years after the Prophet's hijrah to Medina, and a year after the Battle of Badr. After the Battle of Badr, the leaders of Mecca were angry and embarrassed that their army lost to the Muslim army, even though their army was much larger. The leaders gathered a larger army and stationed them at Ainun, a barren land north of Medina and beside Mount Uhud, with their main goal being to murder the Prophet and destroy Islam. Abu Sufyan, a leader of Mecca, led the Meccan army against the Islamic army. Similar to the Battle of Badr, the Islamic army were outnumbered as well, but this time 50 to 1. Mount Uhud was a very strategical and geographical benefit for the Islamic army. It provided structural defense for the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ had deployed 50 marksmen, archers, at the slope of Mount Uhud. This was to ensure that the backs of the Muslims fighting below would be protected and that the opposing force could not attack from behind. He commanded and ordered that these marksmen never leave their posting regardless of the situation. Just like the tradition of the time, a representative was called forward to start the battle. Ali ibn Abu Talib was called forth, representing the Muslim army, and the Meccan army was represented by Talha ibn Abu Talha. During that time, the bearer of the banner was considered to be the leader of the army. Ali was able to defeat Talha and those to come after him. As tensions rised, fighting began, and the Prophet Muhammad charged forward.
The Muslims were gaining more momentum and rapidly defeated the opposing forces. The Muslims were led by Ali ibn Abi Talib, Al-Hamza, Abu Dujana, and more. Unfortunately, during this approach, Islam had lost one of their leaders, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. As Muslims were successful in making the Meccans retreat back, the marksmen who were posted at the slope of Mount Uhud retreated down to the battlefield. Out of their pride and their greed, they disobeyed their orders. Seeing how less marksmen were posted on the slope, the Meccan army saw this opportunity and started to go around the mountain and attack the Muslims from behind. The Muslim army were attacked from the back, which caused so much confusion on who was fighting who that Muslims killed their fellow soldiers. So much so that a lot of Muslims fled and retreated from the battle, leaving the Prophet and his loyal companions behind. Because of this act, many Muslims were killed at the Battle of Uhud. At the same time, the Prophet Muhammad was struck with an arrow and was injured. Ali was one of the brave soldiers who continued to protect the Prophet as the other Muslims left the battle. As the Muslims retreated back to Mount Uhud, the Meccan army withdrew and fled the area thinking they succeeded. Many of the bodies of those killed in battle were buried at the site itself.